Hi, everyone, and welcome to Seirim Cybersecurity Daily Report. Hi, Steven. How are you today?
Doing wonderful. Better than ever, iked. Thank you for asking.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about the following news. The first news, over 73,000 WatchGuard Firebox devices impacted by recent critical flaw. And the second news, Russian hackers evolve malware pushed in I'm Not a Robot captures. Okay, let's dive in. More than 73,800 devices made by WatchGuard, specifically its Firebox line running the Firewall OS, remain vulnerable to a newly disclosed critical flaw. The issue, tracked as CVE 2025-9242, is an out-of-bounds write in the iked process of Fireware. What makes this especially dangerous is that it allows unauthenticated remote code execution. In other words, the attacker could exploit it from the internet without needing to log in. More precisely, the flaw affects Firewall OS versions 11.10.2 through 11.12.4 Update 1 and 12.0 through 12.11.3 and 2025.1. The vulnerable configurations are predominantly those where Firebox appliances are used to support mobile user VPNs via iked version 2 or branch office VPNs using iked version 2 with a dynamic gateway peer. So in September, WatchGuard released patches Firewall OS versions 2025.1.1, 12.11.4, and 12.5.13 and 12.3.1 Update 3, among them covering over 30 firewall models including Firebox Cloud, Firebox NV5, and Firebox V. But despite that, scans by the Shadow Server Foundation as of October 20 showed more than 23,800 devices still exposed. Geographically, the largest clusters of vulnerable units are in the US, it's roughly 24,000, and Germany, 7,000, Italy, 6.5 thousand, and the UK, 5,300, and Canada, 3,900 following. Vulnerable devices span over 100 countries. WatchGuard's claim of servicing over 250,000 small and mid-sized enterprises, the scale of exposure is significant.
Quite a vulnerability here and a lot of lessons to be learned. Yes, you're right, iked. That's true. So a main lesson here is everyone who has such devices and every kind of device, firewalls and otherwise, you got to have your cybersecurity threat intelligence feeds up to date and have a close eye on such issues, right? Because this kind of device does so much, it includes firewall, endpoint security, it's an IPS, it's an IDS, it's everything all in one, right? And they make big claims as far as how much this device can do. I worry the companies have too much confidence in it, right? And they're not careful enough that, or they're not paying attention enough that issues like this, which are incredibly dramatic. I went through Watchtower's research on this, and the ability for them to get remote code execution is pretty incredible. They get full control over these boxes with some effort, but they're able to do it. So the vulnerability here is huge. Luckily, it has been resolved. The fix is out. So if you check on WatchGuard's site, they have the patch and they have the advisory for updating it. So note, if you have WatchGuard devices, Firebox especially, update and patch. Now, beyond that, I also mentioned too, always to aim for zero knowledge frameworks in your environment. Do not only rely on this device to protect everything in internal zones. Still protect with other methods. Your data at rest is encrypted, and use data network segmentation so you aren't relying only on the firewall. So patch if you have it, and keep abreast of your cyber security threat intel feeds so you're always aware of such issues. Those are my takeaways.
Let's talk about the second news. In the latest cyberespionage update, the Russian state-backed hacker group Star Blizzard, also known as COLDRIVER, UNC 4057, and Callisto, has accelerated its operations by deploying new malware families dubbed NoRobot, YesRobot and MaybeRobot via a clever social engineering approach involving bogus "I'm not a robot" Captcha prompts. The campaign begins with a so-called ClickFix attack chain where unsuspecting users are shown a fake Captcha page that tells them to perform a verification step, which in reality triggers the download and execution of malicious DLLs, starting with NoRobot that embed deep in the victim system. After an initial DLL payload is delivered, the threat actors pivot to lighter, stealthier tools like YesRobot, a Python-based backdoor, and then a PowerShell-based variant called MaybeRobot, which supports commands to download and execute additional payloads, run arbitrary commands, and exfiltrate results to attack a controlled servers. The malware chain also employs layered cryptographic splitting of pieces, meaning the final payload only decrypts when all parts are present, a sophistication meant to frustrate researchers and defenders. This shift comes right after public exposure of the group's prior toolset, Lost Keys, indicating the advisory is agile, discards old tools fast, and replaces them with new ones in days. So what do you think about this
Crazy.
one?
This is quite sophisticated, dramatic, and concerning, right? The obvious takeaway here is more social engineering training for your staff. Be careful what they click on. But it's quite sneaky here because we're all kind of trained, right? I'm sorry, not to say trained, but we have the habit of clicking quickly on these "I'm not a robot" pop-ups, right?
Yeah.
They're taking advantage there of a real vulnerability in our behavior, right? We just click those things to get them out of the way. So more training and more awareness is needed here to make sure that the site page that you're on is not hacked or affected, what you're clicking is actually what it is, and that it's not downloading anything. This is an important thing for your staff to be aware of, that nothing that proves you're not a robot should be downloading anything to your computer. And also to be aware of, do not hit any keystrokes by command from whatever browser is showing you online. So part of ClickFix attacks can include tricking the user into hitting the Windows plus R keystroke to help get the run environment going so they can run this malware. So prevent your users from doing such things. They should never be tricked into hitting Windows key plus R, for example, or anything else on their keyboards from what the browser tells them. So that's an important little addition in the social engineering prevention education, right? Another important point here is the way this works is it affects the registry. So file integrity monitoring, or FIM, for alerts for changes in that registry is really important and useful, right? And SIEMs can also do this, but it's often the EDR, the endpoint detection and response solutions that can help you pay attention for that. Also helping there can be Windows Defender and for endpoints, and just enabling registry auditing. These ClickFix campaigns have a huge impact and they're quite dramatic, and we have to watch out for them. So those are my takeaways for that.
Thank you for your takeaways. Thank you for watching, and see you tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.